So if you're on Wegovy, Ozempic, Zepbound, Mounjaro, any GLP-1 for that matter, and you're afraid that you're going to be stuck on it forever, then this video is for you. I'm going to show you the 5 biggest mistakes that I see people make to become dependent on GLP-1s long after they've hit their goal weight, and what you can do right now to not just hit your goal weight, but actually safely come off of these medications. The pharmaceutical industry really isn't incentivized to help you come off these meds. Neither are medical spas that want you paying monthly for the compounded version. As a naturopathic doctor, functional medicine doctor, I want to see you solve the root cause, hit your goal weight, and not be really dependent on anything. So let's jump into it. Guys, if you're on a GLP-1 and feeling stuck, make sure to download our free GLP-1 weight loss and hormone balance cheat sheet down below. Mistake number 1 is staying at too high of a dosage for your GLP-1 for too long, overwhelming the receptors and causing problems. This is the most common mistake, and it's usually doctor prescribed. Let me show you a little chart here. All right, you guys, so what we see here is Wegovy, semaglutide, and this is their commercial dosage escalation chart that doctors follow. Pretty much every med spas and everybody across the board follows this. This is what I call the GLP-1 trap. So if you follow this here all the way to the top, and you may be somewhere on the spectrum right now, I would encourage you to be cautious because somewhere along the line here, your body is going to get overwhelmed. You'll see increase in side effects like nausea, constipation, severe decreases in appetite. When people start to complain about muscle loss and you start to read all these nasty side effects online that make people very wary of GLP-1s, and to be frank, give them quite a bad rap, it's usually because we're working people up this escalation, and somewhere between 0.5 and 1, people start to develop pretty serious side effects. And when you start working them up here, a lot of the weight loss that's occurring can tend to be muscle mass loss just because of severe calorie deficit that we see people have. I am a believer that Wegovy, semaglutide, can be used as a tool, and we don't really need to work people up this escalation in order to have a good result for somebody. In fact, I believe that in placing so much pressure at the receptor level, it's like any medication, there will be a level of dependency after you leave somebody on 2.4 milligrams or 1.7 milligrams of Wegovy for months at a time. The body is going to be dependent, and this is where we see whiplash weight gain when we remove people off the medications abruptly once they hit their goal weight, or insurance no longer decides to cover it for them, and they didn't really change anything else about their lifestyle, about their eating habits, exercise. These are the things that will really help you maintain weight loss after you come off of Wegovy. So what I tend to recommend with patients is we start people at a half dosage typically, so 0.125 milligrams once or twice weekly. We tend to increase this dosage very slowly over time if needed, and I don't really tend to see people needing much more than 0.5 milligrams per week. So mistake number 2 is ignoring your blood work. Let's be honest, most doctors don't run much blood work at all before prescribing GLP-1s. Maybe your doctor has, but it's usually very basic labs. And a lot of the stuff that they're checking isn't great for monitoring you long-term on this medication. So what are the few of the things that we want to look at? Let's dive in and take a look at Mark's labs real fast. He's a 53-year-old patient of mine. Just 3 months ago, he was on a relatively high dose of a GLP-1, semaglutide 1 milligram, and not having any success. So we did a deep dive into his labs and saw just a few things that we wanted to correct. Let's take a look. So typically we run full functional medicine labs on somebody. This is just a small snippet looking at the metabolic side of things. First off, we have his glucose levels, which were fasted at 84. This looks excellent in terms of a fasted blood glucose. Now we contrast this with an elevated A1C at 5.8. This is in that pre-diabetic range, so this is way too high, and this was a big indicator that there were some other things going on here. He wasn't on metformin, he wasn't on any insulin, he wasn't on any other sugar controlling agents, and so this was something that we wanted to take into consideration. I do believe that since there was a large degree of blood sugar instability happening, and I'll show you his insulin in a second, that this was harming his liver as well. You can see his ALT at a 64. This is a little bit problematic and likely means that there has been some fatty liver taking place. So when creating a plan for somebody in this case, we want to do as much as we can to stabilize blood sugar, remove those outlier spikes because you saw his blood glucose was actually pretty good, fasted, and then we want to make sure that we're supporting his liver as well because there's a great deal of liver inflammation here. Then we have his insulin. So insulin levels at a 26.5, this is quite high. Considering that anything above 5 usually tips me off that there's insulin resistance taking place. We definitely, that goes right along with that A1C of 5.8. We need to make sure that we're reducing insulin. We need to make sure that We are taking down the average of his A1C, and at a semaglutide dosage of 1 milligram, I really didn't want to take him any higher than that. A couple last things to note metabolically. Mark's cholesterol panel, although his triglycerides were quite elevated at 174, this usually means that there's a problem with carbohydrate metabolism, probably eating too many carbs. The LDL cholesterol at 106 actually looks pretty good, considering that anything under 106 is typically considered ideal cholesterol. But when we go all the way to the bottom of the panel, you'll see that his lipoprotein fractionation, basically what this does is it looks at the particle counts for LDL. We don't want to see a high particle count or a lot of small LDL, because that's what tends to turn into plaque in the arteries, and it is a big indicator for inflammation and insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. It just goes hand in hand with everything we're talking about. This is something that I wanted to see improve drastically. You can see that some other doctors had run this on him in the past, and he had been much better at one point back in 2022. So that was a big question. It's like, hey man, what were you doing differently in 2022? Let's get back to that. So these are some of just a few of the things that we're tracking in terms of insulin resistance and sort of blood sugar control, in terms of his overall metabolic picture. And imagine that you had a doctor that isn't checking any of these things. How could you possibly be distinguishing if somebody's improving or not metabolically along with treatment? Let's say you're not really seeing the scale move much, but you're seeing massive improvements in these. And I'll show you his comparisons here in just a second. Drastic difference. And this is what we would do with each and every one of the patients that we work with. Which leads me to point number 4, not checking hormone levels. So Mark, as a man, the biggest thing that we want to be considering with him is where is testosterone. Here you can see it's extremely low. His free testosterone is undetectable. Free testosterone is the amount of testosterone in the system that the body's actually able to use at a given time for repair, for a workout, just overall recovery in general. You can see that it's literally not detectable here. So what do we want to do with Mark? Testosterone therapy would be the best case scenario. I always consider injection therapies to be premium. Once a week, I use a 200 milligram per milliliter solution with Mark, which is standard. I started him, I believe, at 0.6 milliliters per week. We made some adjustments for Mark. I think the proof is in the pudding. 3 months later, these are his labs. I'll quickly show you before moving on to the next point. All right, so very quickly, notice that the triglycerides are now down to 71. Cholesterol is just a little bit lower. Glucose is very similar to 82, but his A1C is now down at a 5.4. We've still got some liver enzyme elevation here, although his ALT has decreased. So 0.4 of a point reduction for A1C in 3 months. All we did with him was put him on a vitamin regimen to help fill in nutritional gaps. We helped improve his diet, had him cut up some foods. He actually refused to exercise. He said that he was too busy at work. He literally got 0 exercise, you guys. All he did was make nutritional changes, start taking supplements, and he continued his same dosage of GLP-1 and started losing weight. More importantly, what I wanted to see here was the benefit in the labs. Let's take a look at his insulin, 4.9, all the way down from almost at 25 there. That is a crazy, crazy, crazy reduction. Particle counts are down significantly. I want to see them under 1,000 for LDLP or a particle number, but 1,200 will do for the moment, and we're trying to work them towards green. This was also a huge reduction, over 100 points down on the LDL small. Still in the red, but we want to get him down there under 200 ultimately. So I would say for just 3 months and not increasing his exercise at all, this is significantly better. Let's check out his hormones. So here is his testosterone tests, significantly higher here on total testosterone, but more importantly, the free testosterone here is now back into a normal range. It was undetectable prior, now it's at 83. I usually like to see guys around 100 while on testosterone therapy, but this was later in the week. I believe this was a day 6 draw. He reported more energy with this, more motivation, and started losing weight immediately. Mistake number 4, I could talk on for an hour. It's this concept of not eating enough calories. Now remember, the title of this video is How to Avoid Staying on a GLP-1 for the Rest of Your Life. A great way to stay on a GLP-1 for the rest of your life is be on a high dosage of the semaglutide or GLP-1 and just not eat that many calories. So that is not a sustainable solution. And a lot of the times, and a lot of the people that we work with, we're having to decrease their level of GLP-1 just a little bit, either decrease the dosage, have them dose it more frequently, change that up a little bit so there's not quite as much appetite suppression and stimulation at the receptor level, but also increase their calories. Most women specifically I see are under 1,000 calories per day. And it's just not enough. A lot of times people can lose a lot of weight on that. They'll lose a lot of muscle on that. But the crazy part is a lot of people will also plateau. And it leaves you thinking, oh my gosh, is my body broken? I'm eating under 1,000 calories a day. I'm on this miracle injection and I'm not losing any weight. What is wrong with me? And it's just not as simple as calories in, calories out, number one. The quality of the food matters a great deal. But if you're eating under 1,000 calories a day, a lot of times the body can get shocked, especially in perimenopause and menopause for women, or even andropause in men with low testosterone. The body's in this state like, oh my gosh, I have no hormones, and there's a high level of insulin resistance. And a lot of times the body just holds on to fat. We usually in this case need to bring calories up. And in Mark's case with his labs above, how do we get his numbers looking so much better? We just pulled out inflammatory foods. We put him on an anti-inflammatory diet, high protein, pulled out the dairy, pulled out the nightshades, and had him eat regular meals. Like, it was very fundamental, but there's the conditions that need to be met. We need to be able to track. You have to be eating enough food for the body not to freak out and hold on to every little fat cell that you have for fear that winter is coming, essentially. Mistake number 5, I would say, is not having a clear exit strategy when it comes to your GLP-1 medication. Every doctor that prescribes these GLP-1 medications, there's a clear onboarding, there's a clear on-ramping strategy, but there's no down-ramping strategy. What we do with our clients is we always help people off of the medication once they've hit their goal weight. We need to consider nutritional changes, hormonal changes, all the blood work, inflammation. There's a lot that goes into this to make sure that the weight doesn't just come rushing back. And we want to be very delicate in the process in the way that we taper. I prefer for this process to take a month or two, not just a week or two. Because remember, especially if you've worked up past 1 milligram, your receptors have been bombarded, have been overstimulated. We need to wean off the med sensitively to put you in the best position to not need it going forward. Know what that goal is and have a clear plan to get there. So if you're feeling stuck on a GLP-1 and this resonated with you and you're like, man, I really want somebody to help steer the ship, help me through this process, go ahead and apply down the link below to work with us one-to-one for tailored support. If you're enjoying the functional medicine blood work interpretation and looking at what roadblocks might be contributing to stopping somebody's weight loss or being helpful towards helping someone lose weight on a GLP-1, check this video out next. I think you'll get a lot of benefit out of it. See you guys next week. Take care.